Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Although we often think of chess as an intellectual endeavour of logic, it can sometimes be quite an emotional game. The game I played yesterday was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I started well and felt smug as I was winning, then a perceived blunder led to some panic, and then a couple of actual blunders, and sadness and disappointment at myself. And then elation when a new chance seemed to come from nowhere, leading to a nice checkmate. I hope you enjoy the game. So let's have a look first at the review. So this is what the algorithm shows, and I started off well. I was completely being ahead of my opponent and in a commanding, absolutely winning position, and then two blunders almost back to back, and then here I am basically losing with and I think the worst I got was the opponent had a mate in 4 and somehow was able to equalize and then clinch for a win with mate. So let's have a look at the analysis now. So in this game, I played black, the opponent white. The opponent starts with a knight move, knight to f3. I decide to just play the queen's pawn here. So d5, opponent develops their other knight to c3. I develop knight to f6. And now they moved d4. Effectively a queen's pawn opening. No, the opponent would more commonly, I think, in this situation, open with d4 and then develop the knights. But we get to the same position. I now develop bishop to f5. They develop e3. I do e6. And they also develop their bishop, potentially preparing to castle. I develop my other knight to c6. They do castle, and I develop my bishop to e7. And at the moment, very, very symmetrical position. The opponent brings their bishop out to b5 with a potential attack on the knight. I just opt to castle here, and we are equal. The opponent develops their other knight, potentially now with 2 attackers on that knight. I didn't particularly see it as an issue, so I just thought I'll just sidestep the problem, especially now that the king is no longer being pinned by the bishop, and I have a potential attack here on the pawn on c2. The opponent sees that and blocks with pawn to e4. I capture with the pawn. They decide to kick my pawn out, so kick my knight out, and that's okay. They capture with the knight, and I capture back with the pawn, undoubling my center pawns. And I'm quite happy with this transformation, and the computer thinks that I'm ahead here. The opponent withdraws their bishop to e2. I push my c pawn to c5. That's protected. I felt that this was fairly good to get some expansion on the queen side. The opponent develops their pawn to f3, sort of attacking the center. I didn't necessarily think that this was that good a move, though potentially the opponent does have the opportunity to open the file for their rook. Here, I opted not to take, but simply pushed another pawn forward. The computer suggests taking that pawn would have been better, but I didn't particularly want to help the opponent develop their queen. Opponent captures, I capture back with the bishop. The opponent now brings bishop to g5, attacking the knight. However, I didn't, again, really see this as a major problem for me. I asked the question, what are they really going to do with their bishop? They capture. I'm happy to capture back with the bishop. The opponent now brings bishop to h5. And here I thought, let's start trading pieces. Now, I was up a little bit on material, and that got rid of that pesky knight that was there, though I have allowed their pawn to move forward. check. The opponent's forced to move the king to h1, capture the pawn. I'm feeling that I'm doing fairly well here. They push the pawn, but that is not an issue for me. I'm quite happy to take, and even with the rooks looking at each other, I'm happy to trade rooks at this point. Now the opponent now brings the queen out to g4, attacking this pawn here on e6, which comes potentially with check. At this point, I block, with the bishop. So I was fairly happy with that move. At this point, I was fairly sure I was winning, that I was completely dominant in this position. The opponent brings back their queen, and here I made an inaccurate move, but at the time I thought I had made a blunder. I brought my rook to the e file, thinking to protect that pawn. However, that's not really an issue, I suppose. No, the thing that did concern me was that the opponent might try to, take the bishop. But no, the reality is I didn't have to take back in this direction. I could take back in this direction. But I sort of brought out that move fairly quickly. And then I saw after the move that it was under attack by the bishop. And so I thought I had blundered. And at this point, I was fairly flustered. I did capture back, but now I was flustered in this position, and even prior to this position, I had thought that I could probably just take that pawn with the queen, which would effectively sort of invite a queen trade, which actually would be good for me. And I think that's what the computer says as the best move. However, I sort of lost my nerve and decided to take what looked like what looked like a free pawn, but that was a really bad position, as we will see. The opponent brings out the rook, capturing that pawn. Again, I was very flustered here, thinking that I've allowed the opponent's rook onto the seventh rank, and I make a disastrous move. And again, as soon as I made this move, I automatically knew that, hold on, that was a bad move, because now this rook basically completely restricts the movement of my king to the back rank, and I do not like this. My thought was that I could do with an extra defender, blocking the advances of the opponent's queen and potential rook, but they've already infiltrated. That was a bad move. The opponent now brings their queen to the party, and I realized I had to bring the queen back to provide defenses. But even so, I thought it was quite possible I was heading towards checkmate. Opponent attacks my bishop with the pawn, which is fine. That allows me to just retreat the bishop with check. I was hoping that the opponent would sort of maybe blunder something and that I'll be able to capture, but that was never really on the cards. That wasn't really possible. So that was an obvious move, and now the queen is under attack. However, I did see I had the opportunity to put the king back into check, and now they make the right move, which is to block with the rook. At this point, I knew that I was in some trouble. And so I pulled out this move, which I knew was probably bad, but might give me some fighting chances. And the reason it's bad is, the opponent actually has a forced mate in 4 here, which is through this sequence of moves. Opponent puts me into check. I'm pretty much forced to block with my rook, given I cannot. Well, I suppose I could go into that position as well, but realistically, at this point, it was going to be block, capture. I would potentially, go up to here, and then go there, and Ooh, yeah, and that would be checkmate. So I knew that this was potentially a a problematic move, but I was also thinking that the opponent probably wouldn't see that line of mate. And what it looks like here is an invitation to trade rooks. That's I think the most natural move here. And by getting rid of this rook, I thought that I possibly increased my chances of lasting longer, given how powerful that rook is on the 7th rank. So they took the bait, they captured, I captured back. The opponent now brings out the queen. That allows me to move out of the way. And now neither the rook or the queen has a direct attack on the king. They no, move the queen back here, but again, that's fine. Just allows me to move the king out of the way. Now the opponent here moved their rook back, I think, to reroute the rook. And I thought, okay, I'll just capture that pawn. There's not much else to do at this point. And at this point, I knew that I had some chances. So by moving the rook out of that square, it means it is now possible again to place the king in check. So queen to c5 with check. Opponent, I think, makes a mistake by bringing the king forward. I can check again. And here they make a serious mistake by bringing it forward. Now I have a series of checks, and then the opponent is trapped within the structure of their pawns and my pawns, and neither their rook or the queen can defend. I'm pretty proud of this sequence. So queen to check, forced move, pawn to check, forced move. Well, not forced move actually. The opponent here can get out of check potentially by oh no, they can last longer by capturing with the queen, but yep, still forced move. So king moves, and now I've got two different checkmates, either here or here. I decide to checkmate with the bishop. Good game. I was so happy here to have just crawled back out from a hole to develop what was a fairly pretty mate, I thought. So GG to the opponent. Great game. This game is a good reminder that you can always blunder a completely winning position, but there is value to the notion of never give up, never surrender. The insight for me with this game is to have patience after a bad move, both perceived and real, and not to rush into further errors. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.